the best people do things others don't like to do. So I'd be up in front of a 1,000-person audience at AT&T and get asked, well, how did you get here? And I'm like, look, I'm not as smart. And trust me, of those 1,000 people, I wasn't as smart as probably any of them. Trust me, you can go look at my grades. But when it came to, I did pretty well in college. When it came to work, I was the first in the office every day. I had to be. By the way, I got to tell you a Ralph story. Ralph was CEO of Mobility, and he was the only person, right, that would beat me to the office. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. And I took that as a way, I got to beat him, which means I had to get up at dark 100, right? And I did, because I knew I needed more time to read more and learn more and take in more than others. Because I had to do that. When I studied in college, I knew I had to study more, right? I know Howard went to Stanford. Stanford wouldn't let me on their campus, right? So I had to go work harder. And I think it's that, and it's the competitiveness in the classroom, even in the boardroom. When you see somebody else, when I was in sales, seeing somebody else outsell me in a month was like, that can't happen. That's just not possible.
Welcome to Icons and Insights powered by C360, where the business of sports, technology, and broadcasting converge to create the immersive media economy. Now let's get into it with your hosts, Howard Wright and Cher Jones. Today, we're going to be exploring the power of intrapreneurship and the art of negotiation with our icon, who is an experienced president and CEO with a 30-year career in technology, media, and telecom. So Howard, right up your alley. In fact, he played a key role in ushering in the modern smartphone era by leading AT&T's negotiation with Apple to introduce the first iPhone and iPad. He's also helped to build several of AT&T's lines of business, including the IoT business, digital life, and what we now call Cricket Wireless. So he's currently an active board member on several boards, and I cannot wait to dive into this conversation, Howard. So tell me now that I've given like the resume stuff, you tell me a little bit more about our icon.
It's my man, Glenn Lurie, and he is relentless in his desire to be excellent. He is ferocious in his work ethic, and he has left a long legacy of very innovative deals that were benefits to both sides. And I think when it comes to the Wireless Hall of Fame, I think we'll be calling very, very soon for him.
I love it.
Dude, thanks, Howard. That was very nice of you, especially that I didn't know where you were going to go. So that was a good start.
Howard's fun. Sometimes we don't know where he's going to go, but he always comes in with a winner. So
I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
We're very good friends, but we're going to make sure that we keep this as professional and PG-13 as we possibly can. And look, I got to meet you when I was at Qualcomm, and just started with the emerging device organization AT&T, and you coined the phrase intrapreneurship, and it's stuck with me for some time in terms of being nimble, active, swift inside a big organization. How did you do that? Especially AT&T is one of the blue chip companies of all of our lives.
Well, thanks, Howard. And yeah, we met, by the way, I remember exactly the day we met, Howard, in 2008, when you were at Qualcomm, and we were launching what now is called the IoT business, but was the emerging device business back then. And look, it is very difficult to innovate and build new things in large companies. And what I've said for years is the antibodies fight it. It's very hard. What you have to have is fantastic leadership. And I was very fortunate to have leaders, like Ralph De La Vega and Stan Sigman and Randall Stevenson, et cetera, who really were looking at AT&T's core business, but also looking for that next great opportunity that for us to find other ways to grow revenue. And I still remember our head of strategy, Steve McGaw, did a whole bunch of work around what that IoT business could be. And I still remember walking into Ralph's office with Steve, who had asked me to come with him to, I'm talking about Ralph De La Vega, who is one of my mentors and a legend in the wireless space and at Singular and AT&T. And I walked out of there with a new job. And my new job was to figure out how to go build a brand new business inside of AT&T. Number one, as you said, Howard, you have to have great people. The teams that I had there were fantastic. You have to have great leadership. And you have to have a ton of determination, because there are going to be people that are naysayers. There are people that are saying, wait, you're doing something differently, that we don't normally do it that way. And you have to be able to fight through that. And I was very fortunate to obviously lead the IoT business and handed it off to an incredible leader in Chris Penrose, who took it to the next level. I was able, obviously, you mentioned in my opening that, we launched Aio Wireless, which then became Cricket Wireless, and Jennifer Van Buskirk took that and ran that and made it into an amazing business for the company. And I can go on and on. I was just very fortunate to be given the opportunity to work with such fantastic people and be put on such fantastic projects. And again, I really credit my leadership, my mentors, to trusting me and trusting us to go grow new things inside the company that obviously still today are doing very well.
So one of the things that I love is you're talking about what I like to call the hidden opportunity market. We talk about jobs, there's the hidden job market about who you know, getting into a company. But once you're inside the company, it's about finding those hidden opportunities and creating those opportunities. And what advice do you have for especially leaders on the rise who are sitting there saying, I need to make sure that I get on those projects, or I want to make sure that someone considers me for those opportunities as well?
It's a great question. And first of all, you got to make sure you're in the right company. I mean, today, when you talk to people that are coming up the ranks, one of the things that you have to think about is, am I in that right company that's going to even allow innovation, new businesses to be built, those types of things? That's kind of first. And then once you're in a company that I was in a company I loved, and I had very fortunate to be in the wireless business from almost the very beginning. And there were opportunities if you performed. There were opportunities, right, if you were one of those individuals who stood out. And, I lived by three things, and Howard's heard this for years, and it's called the 3 Ps. The 3 Ps is something that with help from others, we built many years ago when Singular got bought by AT&T. Singular, bought AT&T Wireless. I was with AT&T Wireless, and I was asked to give my philosophy on leadership. And I think it's all about people, purpose, and passion. And the simplicity of the 3 Ps is that if you truly care about the people you work with, and you're really a good people person, I know that's a cliche, but that you know who those people are. You've worked with those people you know. And if you have passion for what you do, which is the third P, I think passion makes up for everything. And you know who those passionate people are, those nut jobs that you work with. And if you truly understand your purpose, right, and why you're there every day and how you make the business successful, I believe that person's an A++. If you have all three of those things. And so when people would come into my office saying, hey, I want that next great project, I usually talk about this. Where are you? Are you being a good partner, leader in the organization? Are you coming to work every day with fire in your belly? Are you doing the things and really sticking out? And if you are doing those things, those opportunities will come. And by the way, every single time, when we at AT&T would look at who our top people are, people would ask me, well, it must have been really hard to make those decisions. And candidly, it really wasn't. You really could tell who those people that were movers and shakers and moving up the organization and really putting in the time and the effort were. And then you get those wonderful opportunities like you asked.
Authentic leadership is a theme of this LinkedIn series that we're with everyone, Lurie. And you know how I feel, Mr. De La Vega. You worked for him, next to him, alongside him for so many years. The great authentic leaders that you had at AT&T, you mentioned Randall, you mentioned Stan, Chris Rini, and others. Can you talk about the uniqueness of those folks, how hard they worked, how purpose-driven they were to generate shareholder value for AT&T?
Yeah, I mean, look, I just was having this conversation today with an ex-AT&T colleague, and sometimes you don't understand how incredible you have it until you leave. And I got to tell you, Howard, you named some incredible people. Look, I was so fortunate to be able to work with Ralph De La Vega, Stan Sigmund, may he rest in peace, John Stankey, who now obviously runs AT&T as its chairman and CEO, Randall. And the thing that I think was amazing is you can take so many things from each of them, right? Every human being, in my opinion, brings something to the table that you can learn from. And being and watching Ralph and how he handled his daily business and how he handled people and how humble he was with everybody was amazing. I mean, I said this to him many a time, watching him in a meeting and how he handled tough situations with customers, with partners, was amazing. And then you go and you think about how Stan did things, and Stan was quieter and big presence, but every word he said meant something, right? And I can go on. And I would say it this way too, Howard. Authentic leadership is not just about who you work for and mentors you have; it's about who you work with. I got to work side by side with so many talented men and women that I just learn from all the time. And I think that's what makes you who you are today. And for me, authentic means trust. Authentic, means doing what you say. Authentic means leading by example. Authentic, I can go down a whole list that I know you've heard from a lot of great people you've had on this podcast. But yeah, I am just feel so fortunate to have worked with, known, got to learn from those great individuals.
So Cher, to give our listeners some context, Ralph de la Vega, if you haven't Googled him, Google him. When he is a boy, he's 10 years old, his family is fleeing Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
Get basically to the dock, and the Port Authority says only the boy can go. 10 years old, the parents have the foresight to send him, a 10-year-old, to relatives that he has never met in Miami. And he grows up, obviously works his ass off, and becomes one of the most respected executives in whatever vertical. And that he, an American, is just another obstacle welcome that he overcame. So his book is still on my shelf, and Lurie got that autograph.
Yeah, it's right over my shoulder. It's called Obstacles Welcome. It's Ralph's book. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Okay, so how do you go from playing in the MLS to the bag phone guy selling bag phones to CEO AT&T Mobility and everything else that you're doing today? There's an origin story. You got to take us back to the beginning here.
Yeah, you'll be here a while, but I won't do that to you, Cher. I would tell you this. Growing up, I cared about one thing, was really passionate about playing soccer, and not maybe as passionate about going to school and those things. Even though I'm from Brooklyn, and my dad certainly held me accountable there on every front. But soccer was my way to go to school, and I worked very hard at it, and luckily got pretty good, got good enough to get a scholarship. I went to Seattle Pacific University and played there. We had a very nice 4 years. I was very proud. I keep track of my teammates. I just had a call with them recently. We won 3 national titles while I was there, and I was, again, fortunate enough, and had a great coach in Cliff McGrath that got me drafted, etc. The thing I did that was most important at SPU was meet my wife. My wife was a gymnast at Seattle Pacific. Her name's Suzanne. In a week, we're married 32 years. She played a massive role in this, because I got drafted by the Tacoma Stars and then traded a week later to the Cleveland Force. And I started my career in Cleveland, and she's younger than me. So we were apart for 2 years, and she completed school, and we got married right after she got done, and then actually played 1 year in Atlanta with her, being a married couple and playing ball. But she was the one who said to me when we got back in the off season, we went back to Portland, Oregon, where I grew up, and I was living in the basement of my sister's home. And she said, "You know what I think you ought to do?" I go, "What?" "Get a real job." And I said, "You know what? I'm a soccer player." And by the way, I was making very little money. And unlike Howard, we'll get into Howard's basketball career in a minute. And really, I literally, it shows you how old I am, I opened a newspaper and started circling opportunities. Mm-hmm. One of the opportunities I circled was Cellular One, which was McCaw Communications in 1990. I had used a cell phone. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. There wasn't even a book you could find on it. By the way, the first book I was ever given, my first business card, is over my shoulder on the right. And candidly, they offered me a job. I interviewed. They liked the fact that I played ball, I could talk a little bit, maybe I could sell something, and hired back when the cell phones were, $2,000 a piece and $1 a minute, and I did pretty well. Thanks to Suzanne, she's the one who said, look, I know you love soccer, but we could have a real job and maybe actually have a family. And so I give her all the credit. And I jumped in, and my first year, I was in sales for about 10 months. And back then they paid a lot when you sold a cell phone, and I was like 300% a plan, and got my first promotion, and off we went. And so I spent 27 plus years with AT&T, having opportunities like you asked about earlier, going from role to role and standing out and excelling and trying to be a great teammate, and was very fortunate with the opportunities that were put in front of me.
So I try to, Lurie, explain to folks the similarities between a locker room and a world-class team in a locker room and a world-class corporate team, executive leadership, the sacrifice, the coverage, the visibility that you need. It's a macro and micro world that you live out. And also that shared passion that you talked about in the 3 Ps. Could you help us explain your lessons learned from locker room, which seems a long distance from a boardroom, but how they are very, very similar?
They are. And you know this, Howard, and this should be a conversation between us because you know this as well as I. We've discussed this numerous times over the years. I think what you first learn is how to deal with people. I got to tell you, I don't know about you, Howard, but I didn't love every teammate I had my whole career. Nope. But you had to find a way, right? You had to find a happy place with everybody because the team's more important than you. And I think I learned it hit me in college. We were winning. We were good. Everybody on the field was very, very, very talented. And if I wanted to be as the best Glenn player I could be, I had to be the best teammate. I had to solve conflicts. Sometimes solving conflicts is a little different. Now, if somebody kicked me in practice, I kicked them back. I wasn't allowed to kick anybody in the boardroom, which was disappointing at times because some people deserve to be kicked in the boardroom. But you have to obviously approach it differently. But reality is problem solving in the middle of a game. My coach is my boss. I was very fortunate too. I had 2 kids who were both ended up being college athletes and one a pro athlete, both in soccer. And I used to say to Mitch, hey, you don't pick your parents, you don't pick your coaches, you don't pick your teachers, but guess what? They're all right. You got to learn how to get along with them. Your boss is the same, right? We've all had bosses. Some we probably like more than others. Say that, right? And you've got to find a way to collaborate and move the business forward. Because what's more important is the team on every situation. And Howard, you know it. You're in the middle of a game. It's heated. Somebody says something goes down. You have to make a decision about how you're going to react to that. And that decision shouldn't be about Glenn or Howard. It should be about the success of the team. And to me, there's so many correlations. I mean, I'd ask you, Howard, what did you learn? I mean, you obviously were in locker rooms for longer than I was.
I learned that hard work almost always beats talent alone. There are players in soccer that have been touched on the foot or the right leg by God himself. There have been other players in basketball that size, they've been touched on the shoulder, that ability to run, that ability to shoot.
Yeah.
One of the things I think brought us to become close friends is that we achieved in our professional sports world, and then we've achieved some level of success here in our corporate world. I see the similarity as there's just no way around. You don't miss days. There's no days off. You got to go lift. You got to go run. You got to go. And in corporate America, it seems like some folks just got into the office a little bit later, left a little bit earlier. What is the minimum that I can do to be on this team and be still, embraced by all the RSU, 401k, and all the accoutrements, I think it is, that corporate America bestows on you, versus the folks that we know as friends, the Peggy's and Paul's and Irwins and Vegas and Chris Rini and those folks.
Yeah.
You didn't have to pay them a thing. They were going to go drive business and create shareholder value in a way that is still awesome to have the friends.
Totally agree. And by the way, I think you said something that's really important. for me, when I look back, the most talented individuals didn't always achieve because they weren't the most competitive individuals. And look, when I was younger, I was competitive in an evil way. I had to win everything. I learned from incredible mentors how to tone that down in the business world. Because you can't do that because you alienate yourself. I mean, I can go through so many correlations, like you just said. I mean, working hard. Think about this. One of my favorite quotes is, "The best people do things others don't like to do." So I'd be up in front of a 1,000-person audience at AT&T and get asked, "Well, how did you get here?" And I'm like, "Look, I'm not as smart. And trust me, of those 1,000 people, I wasn't as smart as probably any of them. Trust me, you can go look at my grades." But when it came to, I did pretty well in college. When it came to work, I was the first in the office every day. I had to be. By the way, I got to tell you a Ralph story. Ralph was CEO of Mobility, and he was the only person, right, that would beat me to the office. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. And I took that as a way, I got to beat him, which means I had to get up at dark 100, right? And I did, because I knew I needed more time to read more and learn more and take in more than others. Because I had to do that. When I studied in college, I knew I had to study more, right? I know Howard went to Stanford. Stanford wouldn't let me on their campus, right? So I had to go work harder. And I think it's that, and it's the competitiveness in the classroom, even in the boardroom. When you see somebody else, when I was in sales, seeing somebody else outsell me in a month was like, that can't happen. That's just not possible, right? I got to go work harder. And I think when you look around at some of the names we're throwing out of these incredible icons, that's there. And you find somebody who's super smart, works really hard, cares about their people, has the 3 Ps down, and you can't stop that person. They're unstoppable.
Look at 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1.
You're good.
Lurie, I've told this story before, but I have to tell it again. My first week at Qualcomm,
I was just going to bring that up because I know that story.
So Lurie, I'm senior director in charge of absolutely nothing except getting stuff off of high shelves, I guess, because I'm 6'8". And I said, okay, you know what? I'm get there to the office early. I pull in 7:15 maybe. There's no time parking in those days. I park, and right behind me pulls in Irwin Jacobs himself, founder Irwin freaking Jacobs.
Yeah.
And there's no security. He's just has his papers and looks like he's kind of thinking through his day and sipping on his coffee. I'm walking about 8 steps in front of him, going into the building, and I said, Howard, this is your chance. Say something intelligent to a man that you respect. So I turn around, and I think I surprise him a little bit. 1, I'm 6'8". 2, it's 7:15 in the morning, and what are you doing here? So he ended up having this conversation from basically the parking lot all the way to basically his office. What are you working on? Who are you working for? What's the goal of that project? He was so intent on learning something about something 75 layers below his CEO-ship, and he was chairman of the board then. So, Lurie, at that point, that's 2000. Irwin himself was worth $1.5 billion, maybe $2 billion. And I'm thinking to myself, I am not worth that. And I got here at 7:15. The owner and the multiple billionaire is getting here at 7. I got to get in earlier than that. I got to do some work.
Yeah. Well, here's something though. That's a great story, by the way, and I've obviously heard that, and it's fantastic. But I want to make a point on that, Howard, because something when you talk about leadership, I hear people say a lot. Well, they got lucky. So someone might say, now here, I think it's important. What you did in that story is you were there and you made your luck, and you were ready for your luck and to take advantage of your luck. It's amazing how people who work hard, read more, come in early, get lucky. And they're not lucky. I don't believe in that. I believe in the fact that you're ready. And when you get in that elevator with that senior person, I got to tell you a similar story. So I was brand new to Singular. They bought AT&T Wireless in 2004. I was one of the executives that they asked to join the news team. I was commuting back and forth from LA to Atlanta because the kids were in school and we were going through this. And we used to have this little Ashford Club in the bottom of our building where you could go and have breakfast. And I walked in there at like 6 a.m. because I'd flown in, I'd stayed, and I got up in early. And who's sitting there? Stan Sigmund. He's the president and CEO of Singular, and he's a incredible man, very intimidating man, by the way, and says, Lurie, why don't you come sit with me? And I sat down and got 30, 40 minutes with the big boss, had a great conversation around, at that time I was running national distribution for Ralph. We talked about a whole bunch of things, but I view that as I made my luck. I got that opportunity to get to know Stan, and obviously got to know him incredibly well. But those are things that happen because you made it happen. And people out there, as they're thinking about their careers, it's up to you to make your luck. It's up to you to be prepared for your luck. It's up to you to make the decisions around what you're going to do in those situations. And Howard, obviously, it worked out for you, right? Because after the conversation, you didn't, your key card still worked. That's good.
And I love that. I think that this conversation is so important as far as the lessons learned between the collective lessons learned between the two of you, because you see the similarities. You guys were ready on message to have those conversations. You took bold steps to be in front of the right people, and then also creating that condition or creating those conditions for multiple opportunities as you found yourself in the right spot. So the luck finds you because you're already sitting there waiting for it to come at you. And that's
well said. Exactly.
It's like, you're literally like, come at me, bro. Come at me with the luck, right? So that's so important. I got a question for you as far as when not necessarily luck shifts, but as you start to navigate in your career, at what point do you start looking at things and saying, okay, I want to pivot and go into this direction next? What do you fall on? Like, do you tap into your intuition, market conditions? What is your thing when you're making those decisions?
Yeah, if you're staying, look, I think, as I said earlier, I think you first of all, if you're in the same company, as Howard spent a lot of time in Qualcomm and then Intel, I spent obviously a lot of time at AT&T. You have to earn those pivots. And you earn those pivots by performing well. You earn those pivots by the 3 Ps, and I've got a few other tools, PI, which Howard's heard me talk about, and delivering for I always say making your boss a hero and doing the things you need to do, right? But I'd also say that our careers and our decisions we make are up to us. I don't believe or play into that somebody else has power over you and or myself or Howard. If you go interview for a job and you don't get it, it's a learning experience. It's an opportunity for then you to make a decision. It's not somebody else's fault that you didn't get it. It's on you. And I think it's important that people, I call it doing a mirror test. Every single day, right? You look in the mirror and say, what am I going to get done today? And when you get home from work and you go look in the mirror, and did I actually have a productive day? Did I get things done? Those are self-awareness tools that allow you to understand kind of where you are. And I've had numerous people, over the years, obviously with running large organizations, come in and say, I'm ready for a promotion. My response is going to be, okay, tell me why, what have you done, where, when, why do you want to go there, and what have you studied? I mean, there's a whole host of ways you can prepare yourself for those pivots. If you're looking to change companies, and it's obviously completely up to you. I mean, the job market right now couldn't be better. There couldn't be more innovation out there. And I think it's all around planning. And by the way, I will tell you, people always say, well, I need a career plan. And I said, my deal is, build a career plan in pencil, because it's going to change and you're going to be wrong. Okay. But you have to have a plan, and then you may call an audible or a shift based upon kind of how you feel, how the market conditions are, or what happens in your company. But it's about flexibility and really having a plan that is going to be wrong, that you can change. One last point. I graduated with a degree in marketing. I was going to be a marketer. I was going to run an agency. I love that stuff, right? And I found out that I was not that good at it. I was better running operations. I was fortunate enough when I got into big roles to have incredible marketing people working for me who were way better than me. But I had to call an audible, and that was done with my mentor's help. It was done with people I trusted in the organization who said, you really need to go over here. This is where your next step.
Hey, Lori, I got one. Let's go in the Wayback Machine. All of these pivots prepare you for the moment when Ralph calls you and says, "Hey, we got to go out to Cupertino and speak to this guy named Steve Jobs."
Mm-hmm.
Went through your mind of the prep? Did you have an inkling that AT&T would be the first carrier to launch this? Take us through that. Talk slow, because I've heard it 1,000 times, but this is
Well, let me start with, I was, I remember exactly where I was. We had done, meaning before I was at Singular, Mark LaFar and Ralph and others had done a deal and built a device called the Rocker. Many people won't remember it because we didn't sell very many of them. But it was the very first time that Apple, Steve Jobs, allowed the iTunes client outside of one of his devices and put it in a Motorola device. I was at the company when we launched it, and it didn't go very well. And by the way, if you think back to those days, it only had 25 songs that could go on it at the time. That was what the decision was. So one of the things people probably don't know is that Ralph formed a very good relationship with Steve, which a lot of people said back then couldn't be done. And of course, Ralph, in his amazing way and humbleness, built a relationship. And so Steve called Ralph and asked us to come to New York to meet with him. That first meeting was actually in Manhattan. And Stan Sigman, again, our CEO of Singular, Ralph, and I went to go see Steve and Eddie Q. And at that time, we were under the impression that Steve wanted to launch an MVNO, that he wanted to do Apple Wireless, and I ran all the wholesale for Singular, and that's how I got included in that meeting. And I would just tell you, I was very fortunate, and I thank Stan and Ralph, Randall, who trusted in myself, and a bunch of folks that you know well, Dave Haight and Dana Tardelli and Mike White, our attorney, to go try to figure out how to do a deal with them. And at that first meeting, we learned it might be a device. I mean, Steve was very cryptic and very, he kept things close. But it took us from that meeting over a year to get the initial agreement done. There's a lot of great stories in that. Obviously, Stan Sigman was the individual who made the final decision to do this, and it was an amazing decision and a scary decision. And Ralph and Pete Richer, our CFO, and Paul Roth, a lot of other people were engaged. This was a team effort. I was just fortunate enough to be asked to kind of lead that group and spent a lot of time talking with Eddie and Steve, and then Tim. Got to know those guys very well. Still friends today with Tim and Eddie. But bottom line was it was epic. It was an epic time, and I was on that point for about 10 years.
And when you look at something like that, as far as from a negotiation perspective, and the things that you learned out of that experience that continues to come with you today, whether in your current board positions or anywhere else where you have to negotiate something, give us a couple tips that are universal negotiation tips that we wouldn't just naturally just pick up if we Google how to negotiate well.
Yeah, I would say this. First of all, that was a long, tough one. But the thing I'm most proud of is that, Eddie and I were on point. Eddie for Apple and me for us. And again, that great team working with me. We did that and became friends, right? And here's the point. Negotiations aren't about winners and losers. If it becomes winners and losers, then that is not going to be a long-standing relationship. I, in my career, wanted to build what I call trusted partnerships. Trust means, and trust is so important, because now if I have a trusted partnership and I call Tim and say, I got a problem, I don't have to have 10 meetings to discuss the problem. He's like, okay, I trust you, so what are we going to do to fix it? And it just speeds everything up. And it was not easy on either side. I mean, both companies, AT&T is a behemoth and usually is, and obviously gets its way a lot. Obviously, Apple at that time was doing very well. Now, obviously, a behemoth. So you've got to look and understand why you're both there. And I'm going to do something that's a little different. It's almost, I joke around, it's almost like a dating exercise, right? Because you meet and one of the things that we did is said, okay, so why are we both here? What are the guiding principles to this relationship? Because it is a relationship. And, and obviously, we had guiding principles. We're the wireless carrier. There are rate plans, and Apple had their guiding principles. We're building the phone. These are non-negotiable. So we started out kind of with this guiding principles, and then we went to, and we kept track of every place we disagreed. I mean, I literally kept the list. And we had to go work through those. And again, I give the credit to Stan and Pete and Ralph and a lot of people in the Singular world, and to Steve and his team and Tim, because both had to give, right? We both had to give at the table to get this thing done. And it was painful. There were many a day that I was nervous about my employment based upon the conversation I just had with somebody over now. But I think if you go into negotiation with an understanding that you want to have a trusted, really true friendship and partnership long term, you'll come out ahead, because now it changes everything. I mean, the contract can go in the garbage. You don't even need to talk about it, because you've got this trust that you've built with that company and individual. And we really got there. Again, a lot of credit to a lot of people that I've named, and if I haven't named some, I apologize, because it was an army that made it happen. I would tell you, getting to know Steve was amazing. He's an amazing man, and obviously a great loss. Tim's obviously come in and done an incredible job, as we can see what they're doing, and how I believe we were able to, back in 2007, change the world.
So the world pivots right then in 2007, and it never returns. Before, it was 40, clamshell keyboard phones, and then the age of the smartphone were ushered in. You guys sold 10 gazillion of those phones going out.
Yeah, they've done pretty well.
So let's go back to when you said there were real tension. And Jobs is known to have a hot head. You've been known to have a hot head. You're forging this relationship with Eddie Q and others. And by the way, David, hot head that we know and love, to get the deal over the finish line from, again, two of the biggest companies in the S&P or in the NASDAQ. How many times did it almost go?
More than a few. The original, I think people know this, we were doing a deal that was very unique. And again, they had to be comfortable, number one, that they were building a phone for the first time. And from your background, that's hard to do. And so, and Steve was very adamant about what he was going to do and how he was going to do it. I still remember a conversation where he told me over the phone that there wasn't going to be a manual. And I'm like, what are you talking? It has to be a manual. You remember at that time Motorola, came with everybody, and Steve said, there's not going to be a manual. I'm like, I couldn't even fathom, and I've got a whole host of those stories, but we all learned so much from each other. And yes, there were arguments, and yes, there were disagreements over lots of things, things in the contract, who owns certain things, the displays in our stores. Remember, Steve used to say that the Apple logo, was precious to him. And so it had to be done right. And he was amazing at that. And like I would say, it was hard. I mean, we were used to, we had 2,200 stores that we had to overnight, without anybody seeing, turn them in and add an Apple display for that launch. And those were big logistics that the team did an incredible job. So no, we had our moments, and that's part of, like I said earlier, it's like any relationship, the relationship with your brother, your sister, your mom, your wife, your husband, you have those moments, and we did. But I think we built up, to use an old Stephen Covey term, we built up an emotional bank account, and we were able to take withdrawals from that bank account without it going bankrupt. And so, look, like I said, it was both sides, and it was a lot of really talented people from both sides that made it work. You talk about Chris Rennie. I don't believe, she was absolutely in the middle of getting that device built. She's an amazing woman. And then you've got folks in the marketing side. You got people that were testing the devices. I mean, every aspect of the businesses changed.
So let's fast forward now into the current day. You are involved in several boards, and what has been your decision-making process as far as where you are going to lend your brain capital and what you're going to do to be involved in these boards?
Yeah, I am, and right now I'm on 4 boards. A couple that I've been on for multiple years, a couple that I've added recently. I'm doing some advisory work, and actually really excited. Just joined a VC firm out of San Francisco as a venture partner as well. For me, and some of the greatest advice I got, and I'm going to give Ralph his due again, is Ralph told me when I joined my first board, make sure you like the people. He said, when you join boards, you have to believe in the company. Of course you do. You have to believe in what they're doing, the technology, whatever that is. But he said, it's about liking the people. And I'm at a point in my career where I'm really fortunate to pick and choose the things that I do and don't want to do. And I got to tell you, it's really hard to say no. I mean, there's so many great people that I've had the honor to know and work with, and getting calls and asking for help. Obviously, I am very passionate about the mobility space, the IoT space, connected car space, the smart city space. All of that to me is still so much more opportunity. I'm very excited about really helping these smaller companies that, the venture firm that I'm working with is called Stormbreaker, and they focus in on the seed round, A round, younger companies. And what you get is incredible young people that are really smart, that have a great idea that, an old guy like me can come in and give them some advice and help them out and help them solve problems. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying it a lot more than I anticipated. And, and they say, they joke, I hear it all the time. Well, some CEOs make good board members, or former CEOs, some don't, because they want to make all the decisions. I am so glad not making all the decisions ever again. This is the greatest thing ever. I just get to give my input and go home, and these guys and incredible women have to then run these businesses. And for me, it's about that. It's about just being valuable and helping. And as Howard and I have talked about this whole time, it's about being authentic. And again, it's been great. And so I've got my hands in some great companies and some great technologies. I'm also, obviously I'm on Avis Budget's board, which has been an incredible run with COVID and all the things going on in that rental world. And that team has just done an incredible job, and really fantastic group of people there. So I'm getting to see kind of some big stuff, some medium stuff, and some little stuff, and it's been great.
So as we let you go, the best day of your professional career and why, and the worst day of your professional career and why? What did you learn from both of those days?
Wow. Best day of my professional career. That's a great question. Let me tell you the worst day first. I got to tell you that, leaving and retiring from AT&T was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my career, because there are just so many people there that I love, and so many people there that, like I've told Howard, the greatest thing I've ever done in my career is the people, and seeing people's lives get better and promoted and getting what they deserve. And, you look at an incredible guy like Jeff McElfresh, who right now is running the communications business at AT&T, who I've worked with for 15, 16 years. And he's amazing, and so proud of what he's done. That's the best. Hardest thing was to leave. And not because I missed the work, and obviously I love what AT&T, it's the people for me. I'd say the greatest, that's a really tough question. There's so many great times that I've had over the years. And, I think one of the greatest days for sure is when, I got a call on a Sunday night from Ralph saying, be in my office first thing in the morning. Now, that's a frightening call, because I didn't know what I had done. I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm thinking, what did I ask for? Did I have what did I do? And I walked in and he told me that he and Randall wanted me to replace him as CEO of AT&T Wireless, and really emotional for both of us, and an amazing day for my family, myself. amazing. It's just, it's one of those times you get numb, and you have to step back and go, I need a second, and Howard knows I'm not usually speechless very often, but that was a pretty awesome day when I look back over the 31 years that I've been in the business world.
When I look back at the time that we spent together, this like 45, 47 minutes, all throughout this conversation, people, purpose, passion, at every aspect of the and turn of your career. And we see how much that we have learned from that, Glenn. So I definitely want to thank you for sharing your passion for people and having that purpose to continue to give back, whether in a board space or just even your time with us, so that we can learn as you are an incredible icon. So I just like to thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you saying that. Obviously, I'll say, I'm here because of the wonderful people I got to work with over the years. And Howard, thank you. I appreciate the invite. Always great to talk with you. It's usually better with a glass of wine in our hands, but we'll do that at a later date. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks so much. And you've been watching or listening to Icons and Insights, so make sure you tap in for the next episode.